I knew something was wrong the second my husband's suitcase rolled through the front door earlier than expected. He wasn't supposed to be home yet, and I wasn't supposed to be caught. The sound of his footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy and deliberate, like a man already sensing betrayal. My heart pounded as the doorknob twisted, and in that frozen moment, I realized everything was about to come crashing down. What he discovered that night not only exposed my darkest secret, but also unleashed a truth so devastating, none of us would ever be the same again. If you had met me a year ago, you probably would have thought I had the dream life. A charming house on a quiet street, a stable husband who worked hard, vacations once a year, brunches with friends where I smiled and pretended everything was fine. Daniel and I had been married for 7 years. He was dependable. Reliable. The kind of man who always kept the gas tank full, who ironed his shirts before work, who remembered to send flowers on my birthday. When we walked into parties together, people would smile and whisper, "Now that's a solid couple." And for a while, I believed it too. But what no one saw were the cracks forming beneath the polished surface. Daniel wasn't a bad man. He never raised his voice. He never made me feel unsafe. But love can die in silence just as easily as in chaos. He worked long hours. Nights, weekends, business trips that stretched for days. He'd call when he could, his voice tired, promising, "It's all for us. For our future." But I wasn't sure what future he was chasing. Because in the present, I was alone. Dinner was often just me reheating leftovers. Nights were spent scrolling through my phone, waiting for his texts that came later and later. And when he was home, he was tired. Always tired. Collapsing on the couch, laptop still open, half his mind still stuck at work. Intimacy became routine, mechanical, something we scheduled rather than something we desired. And though I hated to admit it, I began to feel invisible in my own marriage. The first time I met Richard, I didn't realize he would change everything. It was at Daniel's company holiday party. The kind with too much wine, bad music, and fake smiles plastered on every face. Daniel introduced me to him with pride, saying, "Honey, this is Richard, my boss." Richard was taller than Daniel. Broader. Charismatic in a way that made people lean in when he spoke. His handshake lingered just a second too long, his eyes scanning me with an intensity one wasn't used to. "You must be the famous wife I keep hearing about," he said, smiling. I laughed, brushing it off, but I felt the compliments sink under my skin. We made small talk. He asked about my hobbies, my family, little things no one ever cared to ask at those corporate events. At one point, as he passed me a glass of champagne, his fingers brushed mine, a simple touch, but it jolted me. A current I hadn't felt in years. That night, lying in bed beside Daniel as he snored softly, I replayed Richard's smile over and over in my mind. Weeks later, Daniel invited Richard over for dinner. I cooked like I hadn't cooked in months: roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, a bottle of wine I'd been saving. Richard arrived with a bouquet of flowers, his cologne filling the kitchen as he kissed my cheek. "Smells incredible," he said, his eyes holding mine for a beat too long. Dinner went smoothly until Daniel's phone rang. Another, urgent, business call. He excused himself, walking into the other room. And that's when Richard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You know," he said, "you're wasted on him." My breath caught. I wanted to laugh, to brush it off as a joke. But there was no humor in his eyes. Only heat. I should have stopped him. I should have told him to leave. But instead, I sat frozen, my cheeks burning, my pulse hammering in my ears. After that night, I couldn't get his words out of my head. "You're wasted on him." It was wrong, I knew it. But it was also intoxicating. Someone saw me. Someone wanted me. Someone thought I was more than just the woman waiting at home while her husband chased promotions. I told myself it wasn't cheating to enjoy the attention. It wasn't cheating to feel butterflies when I saw his name light up my phone. The first text came late one night. "Richard, had a great time at dinner. You're intoxicating." I stared at it for minutes, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I should have deleted it. Instead, I typed back. Me, your trouble. That one reply cracked the dam wide open. The messages became daily. Then hourly. Compliments at first. Then confessions. He told me I was beautiful. That Daniel didn't deserve me. That he couldn't stop thinking about me. And I drank it in. Every word. Like a starving woman who had finally found food. I knew it was wrong. But the thrill was too addictive. My heart raced every time my phone buzzed. I started keeping it face down, sneaking glances when Daniel wasn't looking. I told myself I was still in control. That it was just texting. Just words. Just harmless. But deep down, I knew words are never harmless. It was a Thursday afternoon when Richard suggested we meet. Just coffee, he said. Just coffee. I told myself I could handle it. That I would go, talk, laugh, then walk away with nothing more than a memory. But I knew the truth. Once I stepped into that cafe, there would be no going back. I remember the moment I saw him waiting for me. He was leaning back in his chair, that confident smirk tugging at his lips. As if he already knew I was his. When he stood to greet me, his hand brushed my lower back. A small touch, but enough to send heat shooting through me. We talked for hours. About work, about life, about things Daniel never asked me anymore. He made me laugh until my cheeks hurt. He listened like my words mattered. As the cafe emptied, Richard leaned in, his lips hovering inches from mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I didn't. The kiss was fire. Every rational thought screamed at me to pull away. But I melted into it, my hands clutching his shirt, my body betraying me. When we finally broke apart, breathless, his eyes locked onto mine. "This is just the beginning," he said. And I knew he was right. That night, lying beside Daniel, guilt gnawed at me like a ravenous beast. He reached for me in the dark, half asleep, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. And I lay there stiff, feeling like the worst woman alive. I told myself I could stop. That I could put an end to it before it went further. That I could bury the kiss, the texts, the longing. But once you taste forbidden fruit, you can't untaste it. I didn't know it then, but the path I had stepped onto would destroy everything. My marriage. My reputation. My peace. I thought I was in control. I thought I could manage the lies. But I was wrong. So very, very wrong. Because the man I betrayed, my husband, would one day come home early. And when he did, the truth would explode like a grenade, leaving nothing but rubble behind. And it all started with that one kiss. It started with small lies. Little things Daniel would never question. "I'm meeting Sarah for lunch. I have a late yoga class tonight. I promised my mom I'd stop by." All believable. All harmless. All untrue. In reality, those lunches, those classes, those visits, were Richard. Every time I hit send on one of those lies, a pang of guilt stabbed my chest. But the guilt dulled quickly, drowned out by the adrenaline rush of secrecy. Because the moment I slipped into Richard's car, or walked into his apartment, all my doubts disappeared. The second kiss happened the following week. This time, I didn't hesitate. We met at a small bar on the outskirts of town. Somewhere no one would recognize us. He bought me a glass of wine, his knee brushing mine under the table. By the time we left, the air between us was charged, heavy. He pressed me against the car, his lips crashing into mine. And unlike the first kiss, hesitant, guilty, this one was hungry. Desperate. I kissed him back like a woman starved. I wish I could say it stopped at kisses. That we stayed in the realm of stolen moments and unspoken promises. But one night, when Daniel was away on yet another business trip, Richard invited me over. His apartment was sleek, modern, the kind of place designed to impress. He poured me a drink, his eyes never leaving mine. "Tell me this isn't what you want," he said, his voice low, his hand tracing the outline of my arm. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. That night, I crossed a line I could never uncross. The morning after, I stared at myself in the mirror. My hair was tangled, my skin flushed, my lips bruised from his kisses. I should have felt disgusted. Ashamed. Instead, I felt alive. For the first time in years, I felt like a woman. Desired. Wanted. Seen. But alongside the thrill was fear. Because now, I wasn't just flirting. I was betraying my husband in the most intimate way possible. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. By day, I was the dutiful wife. Smiling at neighbors. Hosting dinners. Going to brunches. By night or stolen afternoons I was someone else. A liar. A cheater. A woman with a secret burning beneath her skin. I learned to hide the evidence. Extra showers before Daniel came home. Careful checks of my phone for messages left unread. Spritzes of perfume to mask cologne that wasn't my husband's. The lies piled up, but so did the desire. The more I had Richard, the more I wanted him. At first, it was me sneaking away to see him. But soon, Richard began pushing for more. "Leave him," he whispered against my skin one night. "We could be together, for real." My stomach clenched. Leave Daniel? The man who built this life with me? The man I promised forever to? I shook my head. It's not that simple. Richard smirked. It could be. If you wanted it to. His words lingered, heavy, even after I left. Meanwhile, Daniel seemed oblivious. He was busy, distracted, always on his phone or laptop. But every now and then, he'd look at me with those tired eyes and say, "Thanks for being patient with me. I know I've been working too much." And every time he said it, I wanted to scream. Because patience wasn't what I was giving him. I was giving him betrayal. Lies. Secrets. One night, as he kissed me softly before bed, I nearly blurted it all out. The words, "I'm cheating on you," hovered on my lips like poison. But I swallowed them. And instead, I smiled. Affairs are a strange cocktail of emotions. Half thrill. Half terror. The thrill of a secret rendezvous. The adrenaline spike when my phone buzzed with his name. The rush of knowing I was wanted. But also the fear. The fear of slipping up. Of Daniel finding a text, a receipt, a stray hair on my clothes. Every day felt like walking a tightrope. And with each step, the rope frayed just a little more. The closest I came to being caught was on a rainy Wednesday. Daniel had come home early, surprising me. I was still in the shower, scrubbing Richard's scent from my skin. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, Daniel was sitting on the bed, scrolling through my phone. My heart stopped. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your phone buzzed. Thought it might be important." I crossed the room quickly, snatching it from his hands before he could see more. "It's just Sarah," I lied. "She's been going through some things." He nodded, apologetic, and kissed my cheek. But my hands shook for hours afterward. You might ask, if it was so terrifying, why didn't I stop? The answer is simple: I didn't want to. Because every time I tried to pull away, Richard pulled me back in. With his touch. His words. His promises of passion and excitement that Daniel no longer gave me. I told myself I deserved it. That life was short. That I had sacrificed enough. And with each justification, the hole I dug grew deeper. Then came the test. The 2 pink lines that changed everything. I sat on the bathroom floor, shaking, staring at the plastic stick in my hand. Pregnant. I should have been happy. Daniel and I had talked about kids for years. We had even tried, though nothing ever came of it. But now, instead of joy, I felt dread. Because I didn't know whose baby it was. I told myself it had to be Daniel's. It had to be. I clung to that hope desperately, convincing myself that the timing lined up. That it was possible. That fate was giving us a gift, and I just had to believe. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I knew. I knew it wasn't Daniel's. And I knew the truth would eventually destroy us both. Looking back, that was the moment I should have stopped everything. I should have confessed. I should have come clean. But instead, I doubled down on the lies. I convinced myself I could carry this secret forever. That Daniel would never know. That Richard didn't have to know either. But secrets don't stay buried. And the truth, the brutal, inescapable truth, was waiting just around the corner. There were two versions of me now. The wife everyone knew, cooking dinners, smiling at neighbors, laughing at brunches with my friends. And the woman Richard knew, reckless, hungry, consumed with a passion I couldn't control. I had become an actress in my own life, playing two roles with a mask I never took off. The problem with playing two roles, though, is eventually you forget which one is real. Deception became a routine. I'd text Richard in the mornings when Daniel was in the shower. I'd slip away in the afternoons under the pretense of errands. I'd delete messages with surgical precision, always double-checking that nothing was left behind. My phone was my greatest enemy and my greatest lifeline. A single careless moment could expose me. But without it, I couldn't breathe. Richard's name lighting up my screen was like oxygen. And I was addicted. But other people noticed. At brunch, my friend Jessica tilted her head at me, squinting. "You've been different lately." Glowing. "What's going on?" I laughed too quickly. "Just trying a new skincare routine." She raised a brow but let it slide. Later, another friend, Melissa, teased, "Bet Daniel's been keeping you busy." The table erupted in giggles. I forced a laugh, but inside, panic twisted my stomach. If only they knew the truth. Richard was changing too. In the beginning, he was exciting, spontaneous, fun, almost boyish in his pursuit of me. But now, there was an edge to him. One night, after I left his apartment, he grabbed my wrist. "When are you going to tell him?" I froze. "Tell who?" "Daniel. About us." "I can't," I whispered. His eyes darkened. "You can't hide forever. I'm not your dirty little secret." I pulled away, forcing a smile. "Just be patient." But his words haunted me long after I left. The pregnancy was my private nightmare. I went to the doctor alone, gripping the edge of the exam table as the ultrasound confirmed it. A baby. A tiny flicker of life. The doctor smiled warmly, congratulating me. But her next words shattered me. She asked about Daniel's medical history. About fertility issues. About treatments. And with a casual tone, she mentioned what I already knew but refused to face. Daniel had been diagnosed as infertile years ago. Our chances of conceiving naturally were next to impossible. The truth hit me like ice water. This baby wasn't his. It was Richard's. At home, Daniel was overjoyed when I told him. His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. He lifted me off the ground, spinning me, kissing me with a passion I thought was gone forever. "We did it," he whispered against my neck. "We're finally going to be parents." And I smiled. I hugged him back. I played my role. But inside, I was screaming. The lies multiplied. Doctor's appointments became a balancing act of excuses. I told Daniel the baby was due in a timeline that made sense for us, even though deep down I knew the math didn't add up. I avoided conversations about baby names, about nursery colors, about the future. Because how could I plan a future built on such a rotten foundation? And yet, I kept going. Because stopping meant confessing. And confessing meant losing everything. Richard, on the other hand, was relentless. When are you telling him? He demanded one evening, pacing his apartment like a caged animal. I can't, I said, my voice breaking. He's so happy. I can't take that away from him. Richard's eyes narrowed. So what? You'll just raise my child with him? Pretend like I don't exist? I swallowed hard. It's the only way. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't sustainable. The paranoia started small. I'd hear my phone buzz in another room and sprint to grab it before Daniel could see. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I left a message unread. I'd jump every time Daniel asked, "Who's that?" when I glanced at my phone. Every smile, every kiss, every kind word from Daniel felt like a knife. Because he didn't know. Because if he knew, it would destroy him. And me. The breaking point nearly came at a company dinner. Richard was there, of course, sitting across the table from Daniel and me. He smiled politely, keeping up appearances. But his eyes never left me. At one point, Daniel excused himself to take a call. Richard leaned forward, his voice low. You look beautiful tonight. Stunning. My stomach twisted. Stop, I whispered. He smirked. Why? No one's listening. But when Daniel returned, his gaze flicked between us. Just for a moment. A flicker of suspicion. And my heart nearly stopped. Later that night, Daniel asked casually, "So, you and Richard seem close." My pulse spiked. Close? What do you mean? He shrugged. He just looks at you a lot. That's all. I forced a laugh. He's your boss, Daniel. You're imagining things. He let it go, but the seed had been planted. And I knew it was only a matter of time before that seed grew. The deeper I went, the less I recognized myself. I was snappier with friends. Distracted in conversations. Always checking the time, calculating how long I could slip away without raising suspicion. I'd look in the mirror and see a stranger. A woman with secrets in her eyes, with shadows clinging to her smile. And sometimes, I wondered if maybe I wanted to be caught. Because the weight of carrying it all alone was unbearable. Looking back, I realize now that the walls were already closing in. Daniel wasn't as oblivious as I wanted to believe. Richard wasn't as patient as he pretended to be. And the truth, my truth, was too big, too ugly, too dangerous to stay hidden forever. I was living two lives, and sooner or later, one of them had to end. And when it did, everything would come crashing down. That little stick with two pink lines became my curse. Most women see hope in it. A new chapter. A miracle. But for me, it was a loaded gun one I was holding to my own head. Daniel was ecstatic. His face when I told him glowed like I hadn't seen in years. He held me, kissed me, whispered, "We're finally going to be parents." And I smiled back, pretending. Pretending it was his. Pretending I wasn't suffocating inside. Because I knew the truth. And the truth was poison. The doctor's voice replayed in my head on loop. Given Daniel's infertility history, natural conception is highly unlikely. Unlikely. That word gutted me. Because I didn't need a DNA test. I didn't need charts or timelines. I already knew whose child I was carrying. It wasn't Daniel's. It was Richard's. And no matter how many lies I wrapped around that truth, it burned through me like acid. Daniel became even more attentive after the news. He cooked me breakfast before work. He rubbed my feet in the evenings. He started sketching nursery ideas on napkins, asking if I liked yellow or green for the walls. He even canceled one of his business trips, saying, "I don't want to miss a single part of this." And every time he looked at me with that pure, unfiltered joy, I wanted to collapse into sobs and scream the truth. But instead, I kissed him. I told him I loved him. And then I snuck into the bathroom, locked the door, and cried until my eyes burned. Richard reacted differently. When I told him, his face split into a grin. So it's ours, he said, pulling me into his arms. Finally. Proof we belong together. I pushed him away, panicked. No. He thinks it's his. He has to. Richard frowned, his jaw tightening. You can't keep lying to him forever. Yes, I can, I snapped. I have to. Do you understand what would happen if he found out? Richard studied me, his expression darkening. You're mine now. That baby proves it. You can't erase me. His words chilled me. Because deep down, I knew he was right. The lies multiplied like weeds. Doctors' appointments became elaborate performances, changing schedules, hiding test results, deflecting questions. Daniel would ask, "How was the appointment? Is everything okay?" And I'd smile and say, "Perfect. Everything's perfect." Meanwhile, inside, I was drowning. At night, I'd lie awake listening to Daniel breathe, my hand resting on my stomach. I'd whisper to the unborn child, "Please, don't look like him. Please, don't give me away." It happened at dinner with Daniel's parents. They were thrilled, of course. His mother clasped my hands, tears in her eyes. I prayed for this day. You two deserve it so much. But then his father, ever practical, said, "Funny how nature works, eh? After all those struggles, suddenly it just happens." I froze, my fork clattering against the plate. Daniel quickly filled the silence with a joke, but I saw his eyes flicker just for a second. Suspicion. Tiny, but there. And it terrified me. Fear became my shadow. Every time Daniel touched my stomach, I flinched. Every time he mentioned baby names, I wanted to vomit. Every time he smiled at me, I felt like a thief stealing joy I didn't deserve. I started avoiding his gaze, afraid he'd see the truth in my eyes. And at the same time, Richard became more possessive. More demanding. He wanted me to move in with him. To plan a future together. "You can't raise my child with him," he argued. "It's wrong." And yet, that's exactly what I intended to do. One night, Daniel and I sat on the couch, his hand resting gently on my stomach. He looked at me with such tenderness it broke something inside me. "You're quiet tonight," he said softly. I opened my mouth. The words trembled on my tongue. I cheated. "This isn't your baby." But then he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I can't wait to meet our little one." And just like that, the words died in my throat. Because how could I destroy him when he was so happy? That night, I dreamt of giving birth. In the dream, the baby was beautiful, but when Daniel held it, he froze. Because the baby didn't look like him at all. It looked like Richard. Daniel's face twisted into horror. Then rage. Then betrayal. He dropped the baby. And I woke up screaming. The more I lied, the harder it became to maintain the mask. Daniel noticed. "You've been distant lately," he said one morning over coffee. "Is something wrong?" I forced a smile. "Just tired. Pregnancy hormones." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me, searching. And I realized that no matter how carefully I crafted my lies, Daniel wasn't blind. He could sense the truth, even if he couldn't see it yet. Richard was growing impatient. One afternoon, as we lay tangled in his sheets, he whispered, "Tell him. Tonight. Or I will." I sat up, panic flooding me. "You wouldn't." His expression was cold. "Don't test me." I knew then that I wasn't just trapped by my own lies. I was trapped by him. Looking back, I see how inevitable it was. The lies couldn't last forever. The baby was a ticking clock. And both men, my husband and my lover, were circling closer and closer to the truth. I thought I was clever. I thought I could juggle the lies indefinitely. But lies are heavy. And eventually, they crush you. At first, it was subtle. Daniel didn't kiss me quite as long before leaving for work. He didn't laugh as easily at my jokes. His eyes lingered on me a little too long, like he was studying me instead of simply seeing me. He hadn't said anything outright, but I felt it. Suspicion. Quiet, creeping, poisonous. And that scared me more than if he had confronted me directly. Because silence left me guessing. One evening over dinner, it happened. Daniel asked casually, "So, how was your doctor's appointment yesterday?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Yesterday? I had told him earlier in the week that my appointment was Thursday. But yesterday was Wednesday. I smiled too quickly. Oh right. I mixed up the days. It's tomorrow. He tilted his head, watching me. Tomorrow? Yes. My voice was too bright, too rehearsed. Pregnancy brain. I can't keep track of anything lately. Daniel chuckled softly, but his eyes didn't laugh. Meanwhile, Richard was getting bolder. At Daniel's company mixer, he brushed past me and whispered, "You look incredible tonight." His hand lingered on my back a moment too long. I stiffened, glancing around in panic. No one seemed to notice, but my heart hammered in my chest. Later, I caught Daniel watching us from across the room, his expression unreadable. When we got home, he asked quietly, "Do you like working with Richard?" My stomach dropped. "Of course," I said quickly. "Why?" He shrugged. "You just seem close." I forced a laugh, kissing him on the cheek. "You're imagining things." But I could feel the ground cracking beneath me. Daniel became obsessed with the baby. He read books, watched tutorials, even downloaded an app to track weekly development. Every night, he'd tell me, "The baby's the size of a plum now," or, "Did you know their heart is beating twice as fast as ours?" His excitement was genuine. Pure. And it tore me apart. Because every fact he recited, every hope he voiced, was a reminder of the secret I was keeping. And one night, as he held my stomach and whispered, "I can't wait to see if they have my eyes," I had to turn away before he saw the tears burning in mine. It was a Saturday morning when my phone nearly betrayed me. Daniel was making pancakes in the kitchen while I showered. When I came out, he was standing by the counter, holding my phone. "Richard messaged you," he said evenly. My blood froze. I snatched the phone from his hand, scanning the screen. Thank God the message was innocent enough. Meeting rescheduled to Monday. Confirm? Still, Daniel's eyes were sharp. Too sharp. "Why is he messaging you on the weekend?" I forced a smile. "Work doesn't stop, I guess." He nodded slowly, but I knew he didn't believe me. That night, I dreamt again. In the dream, Daniel was holding our baby. But as he stared at its tiny face, his expression twisted. "This isn't mine," he whispered. His voice grew louder, harsher. "This isn't mine." He looked at me then, eyes blazing with betrayal. And Richard appeared behind him, smirking, his hand resting on my shoulder like a brand. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. And for the first time, I wondered if my subconscious was trying to warn me. Daniel's silence grew heavier. He didn't accuse. He didn't yell. He didn't confront. He just watched. Every question he asked was casual on the surface but edged with suspicion. "What did you do today? Who were you texting? Why were you late coming home?" And each time, I lied. Smoothly. Effortlessly. Too easily. But I could feel his quiet anger building, like thunder rolling in the distance. Richard, on the other hand, was done with patience. "You're going to tell him," he said one night, gripping my arm. "Or I will." I yanked away, my voice sharp. "You don't understand. If he finds out, it's over. Everything. My marriage. My life." Richard's eyes burned into mine. "It's already over. You're mine now. That baby makes it permanent." His words made me feel trapped. Caged between two men. 2 lives. 2 lies. And the walls were closing in. It happened at dinner. Daniel poured me a glass of water, his tone casual. So, what did the doctor say about your next ultrasound? I froze, scrambling. I hadn't mentioned an ultrasound to him. But he smiled faintly, like he knew I was lying before I even opened my mouth. They didn't schedule one yet, I said quickly. Daniel nodded, taking a sip of his drink. Strange. I thought they usually scheduled those pretty regularly. And just like that, the air between us thickened. Because it wasn't a question. It was a warning. Every night, I lay awake, drowning in guilt. Daniel's love felt like a noose tightening around my throat. His devotion, his tenderness, his joy, they were the very things destroying me. Because the happier he became, the more monstrous I felt. And sometimes, I'd look at him sleeping beside me and wonder, would it be kinder to tell him now? To rip off the bandage before the wound grew deeper? But then he'd stir, pulling me close, whispering, I love you. And I'd stay silent. The mask was cracking. Daniel's suspicion was sharpening into certainty. Richard's patience was running out. And I was unraveling. I thought I could keep the lies straight. I thought I could hold it all together. But I was wrong. Because the truth has a way of clawing its way out, no matter how deeply you try to bury it. And I could feel it rising, ready to explode. There's a silence before every storm. That kind of silence where the air feels heavy, charged, waiting to split open. That's what my house felt like. Daniel was quieter than ever. He didn't ask casual questions anymore. He didn't reach for me in bed. He didn't even smile the same way. But he watched me. Always watching. And I knew. I knew he had put the pieces together. It was a Tuesday night. I made lasagna, his favorite, hoping food might soften him. We sat across from each other, the clinking of forks against plates the only sound. Halfway through, Daniel set his fork down. His eyes met mine, steady, unblinking. Who is he? The words sliced through me like a blade. My throat closed. My pulse roared in my ears. What are you talking about? Daniel leaned back, his jaw tight. Don't insult me. I've watched you for months. You're not here anymore. You're somewhere else with someone else. Tears blurred my vision. Daniel. Who is he? His voice cracked on the last word. And for the first time, I couldn't lie. Richard, I whispered. The name hung in the air like poison. Daniel's face went pale. His lips parted, but no words came. He pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. Richard, he repeated, almost to himself. My boss. My friend. The betrayal in his eyes gutted me. I reached for him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. He flinched away like my touch burned him. Don't, he snapped. His voice was broken glass. Don't you dare. And then his gaze dropped to my stomach. The silence stretched, unbearable. Finally, he asked, his voice hollow, is it his? I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect him from the cruelest truth of all. But my lips trembled, and the silence was my answer. Daniel staggered back like I'd struck him. His hands clenched into fists. His face crumpled. My God, he whispered. All this time. All this joy. And it was a lie. He stormed out of the dining room, pacing the hallway like a man possessed. I followed, sobbing. Please, Daniel, listen to me. Listen to you, he barked. You let me believe this was ours. You watched me paint a nursery. You watched me dream about our future. And you, his voice cracked. You knew. I dropped to my knees, clutching his hand. I didn't mean for it to happen. I love you, Daniel. I do. He yanked his hand away. No. You don't love me. You don't destroy someone you love. As if the universe wanted to twist the knife deeper, there was a knock at the door. Daniel froze. His eyes narrowed. Slowly, he opened it. And there stood Richard. The sight of him confident, smug, standing on our doorstep made Daniel's rage ignite. "You," Daniel spat. Richard's smirk faltered as he glanced between us. "I think we should talk." Daniel lunged. "You son of a..." I screamed, shoving myself between them. "Stop. Please." The house erupted in chaos. Daniel shouted, his voice raw with betrayal. "You ruin my marriage, you steal my wife, you put a child in her." Richard's voice was cold steel. "She came to me. Don't act like I forced her." Daniel's fist connected with Richard's jaw, sending him stumbling. Richard swung back, the two of them crashing into the coffee table. "Stop!" I cried, grabbing at them, but they were too far gone. Years of friendship, trust, brotherhood destroyed in a storm of fists and rage. Finally, Daniel shoved Richard away, chest heaving. His face was streaked with sweat and fury. "Get out," he growled. His voice shook the walls. Richard straightened, wiping blood from his lip. His eyes burned as he looked at me. "You don't have to stay with him. You and the baby. Get out." Daniel's roar left no room for argument. Richard's jaw clenched, but he left, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. And just like that, the house fell into silence again. Daniel stood there, trembling. His eyes glistened, his face crumpling as the weight of everything crashed down. He looked at me like I was a stranger. "I gave you everything," he whispered. "Everything. And it wasn't enough." Tears poured down my face. "I'm sorry. I swear I never stopped loving you." He shook his head slowly. "No. You stopped the moment you let him touch you." Those words shattered me. Because they were true. Daniel grabbed his coat, his keys, his wallet. "Where are you going?" I sobbed. "Away," he said simply. "I can't look at you right now. I can't breathe in this house." And then he was gone. The slam of the door echoed through the empty rooms, louder than any scream. I sank to the floor, clutching my stomach, sobbing until I couldn't breathe. Because the confrontation I dreaded for months had finally come. And it had destroyed everything. But I was wrong to think the worst was over. The confrontation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The aftermath, the choices, the consequences, the fallout would be far worse. Because once the truth is revealed, you can't put it back in the shadows. And I was about to learn just how devastating the light could be. After Daniel left that night, the silence was unbearable. The lasagna sat cold on the table. The broken coffee table still lay in pieces from the fight. The air smelled faintly of sweat and rage, a reminder of fists that had flown where love once lived. I sat on the floor for hours, numb, staring at the door as if he might walk back in. But he didn't. And the house felt less like a home and more like a tomb. I called him. Again and again. "Daniel, please. Just talk to me. Daniel, I'm sorry. I love you. Please come home." Voicemail. Every time. I sent messages that went unread. I drove to his office, only to be told he wasn't there. I checked with his friends, his parents. No one had seen him. It was as if he had vanished from my life. And in a way, he had. 2 days later, Richard showed up at my door. He stood there, his jaw bruised, his expression tight. "You okay?" I wanted to slam the door in his face. But instead, I let him in. He poured himself a glass of water, glancing around like he owned the place. "He'll get over it. Eventually." I turned on him, fury rising. "You don't understand. You don't know what you've done." Richard's eyes narrowed. "What I've done? You chose this too." You can't put all the blame on me. And I hated him in that moment. Hated him for being right. Days turned into weeks. Daniel still hadn't come home. He sent a single message through his brother: "I need time. Don't contact me." That broke me more than any shouting ever could. Because it wasn't rage anymore. It was detachment. And detachment is colder than hate. Meanwhile, Richard grew more insistent. He wanted to move in. He wanted to plan for the baby. He wanted me to forget Daniel like he was nothing but a memory. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Because no matter what I had done, Daniel was still the love of my life. Word spread, of course. It always does. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. At brunch, the few who still showed up exchanged glances when I spoke, their pity slicing deeper than judgment ever could. One finally said it outright: "You cheated on Daniel, with his boss? And now you're pregnant?" I stared into my coffee, unable to answer. The silence was its own verdict. And I realized then that betrayal doesn't just destroy marriages. It destroys entire worlds. At night, I'd lie in bed, my hand on my stomach. The baby kicked gentle at first, then stronger. A reminder. A living, breathing reminder of everything I'd done. Sometimes I whispered, "I love you." Sometimes I whispered, "I'm sorry." But mostly, I whispered, "Please don't ruin me." Because the baby wasn't guilty. The baby hadn't chosen this. And yet, its very existence was tearing my life apart. 3 weeks after Daniel left, I saw him. I was at the grocery store, pale and exhausted, when I spotted him down the aisle. He looked thinner. Tired. But still devastatingly handsome. I called his name. He froze, then turned. For a heartbeat, I thought he might come to me. That he might soften, forgive. But instead, he looked at me like a stranger and walked the other way. My knees buckled. I clutched the cart, trying not to collapse. And in that moment, I realized I had lost him. That night, Richard held me as I cried. "He's not coming back," Richard said firmly. "You have to accept that." I shook my head violently. "No. He's my husband. I love him." Richard's grip tightened. "And I'm the father of your child. Whether you like it or not, I'm not going anywhere." His words weren't comforting. They were chains. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe Richard wasn't salvation at all. Maybe he was just another prison. In my desperation, I began writing letters to Daniel. I poured everything onto paper: my guilt, my love, my pleas for forgiveness. "I never meant to hurt you. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. Please give me a chance to make this right." I mailed them, week after week. No response ever came. But writing them was the only thing that kept me sane. One night, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes. Hollow cheeks. A sadness that aged me years. I didn't recognize the woman staring back. This wasn't the wife Daniel had loved. This wasn't the mistress Richard had desired. This was someone broken. And the terrifying truth was, I had broken myself. A month after the confrontation, I got a letter. Not from Daniel. From his lawyer. Divorce papers. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the pen. The ground seemed to collapse beneath me. Because this was final. This was real. And though I signed nothing that day, I knew deep down. Daniel was gone. The confrontation had shattered us. But the aftermath? That was worse. Because betrayal doesn't just end a marriage. It leaves ruins behind. And in those ruins, you're forced to live with yourself. I thought the fight was the climax. But no, the real pain was only beginning. Because once the dust settles, you're left with the silence. And the silence is deafening. The divorce papers sat on the dining table for 3 days before I touched them again. Every time I walked past, my chest tightened. The words petition for dissolution of marriage seemed to glow like fire. I couldn't bring myself to even flip through them. Signing meant it was real. Not signing meant I was clinging to a ghost. I stared at Daniel's neat signature at the bottom, and my hands trembled. He had been decisive. Unshakable. That calm pen stroke had ended everything we had built in nearly 10 years. And all I could think was, how can ink undo a life? When I finally called the number listed in the letter, the lawyer's voice was brisk. Cold. Yes, Mrs. Collins, we'll need you to review the terms. Mr. Collins is asking for a clean break. He's not seeking alimony, but he is requesting full separation of assets. I swallowed hard. He doesn't want anything from me? There was a pause. Then, with a hint of pity, he doesn't want anything to do with you. The words pierced deeper than any insult. When Richard found out, he smirked. Good. That means he's out of the way. Out of the way. Like Daniel was just some inconvenient obstacle, instead of my husband, my partner, my everything. I glared at him. You don't get it. This isn't good. It's not what I want. Richard's jaw tightened. What you want? You think you can have both of us? Newsflash, sweetheart, he's gone. You need to start accepting reality. And in that moment, I saw something in him I hadn't noticed before. Control. Ownership. A darkness beneath the charm. Nights grew colder, even though summer was still clinging to the air outside. I would lie in bed, Richard beside me, his arm heavy across my stomach. But the warmth I craved wasn't there. I missed Daniel's steady breathing. His absent-minded hums before falling asleep. The way he used to tug me closer in the middle of the night, like even in dreams he didn't want to let me go. Now the silence between me and Richard was suffocating. And though I tried to convince myself this was the bed I had made, I couldn't stop thinking, why does it feel like a coffin? I avoided going out as much as possible, but sometimes it was unavoidable. At the grocery store, I heard whispers. At church, I felt stares burning into my back. Even my parents, when I finally told them the truth, looked at me with thinly veiled disappointment. My mother's voice was sharp. You had a good man. How could you throw that away? I had no answer. None that made sense. None that didn't sound pathetic. So I just sat there, tears streaming silently, while my father shook his head. And I realized, I hadn't just lost Daniel. I had lost everyone. As my belly grew, so did the tension. Richard treated the pregnancy like proof of victory. He hovered, made decisions without asking me, doctor appointments, nursery colors, even names. Meanwhile, every time I looked in the mirror, all I saw was the wedge that had driven Daniel away forever. One evening, Richard pressed his hand against my stomach, grinning. This is our future. Forget the past. But all I could think was, the past was all I ever wanted. The letters I had written Daniel, dozens of them by now, began coming back unopened. My heart cracked with each envelope marked return to sender. He wasn't even reading my words. My apologies. My pleas. He had walled himself off completely. And though I wanted to scream, to beg, to show up at his doorstep, something inside me whispered, he doesn't want you anymore. You burned that bridge yourself. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. I remember walking into that sterile courtroom, the smell of paper and dust thick in the air. Daniel was already there, seated on the opposite side with his lawyer. When our eyes met, my breath caught. He looked good. Healthier. Stronger. Like the weight of me had been lifted from his shoulders. I wanted to run to him, fall on my knees, beg. But I sat quietly, my lawyer whispering instructions. The judge asked routine questions, flipping through documents. Daniel spoke only when asked, his voice steady, detached. When it was my turn, my throat closed. "Two don't want this divorce," I whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't look at me. "I do." And just like that, the gavel came down. Final. Irrevocable. I stumbled out of the courthouse like a drunk. Richard was waiting outside, leaning against his car, sunglasses on. He wrapped an arm around me. "It's over. You're free now." But I didn't feel free. I felt gutted. I pulled away, whispering, "You don't understand. I didn't want freedom. I wanted him." Richard's smile vanished. His grip on my arm tightened. "Well, too bad. You have me now. And you'd better start appreciating it." His voice was low, dangerous. And for the first time, I felt afraid. Life with Richard after the divorce felt less like a partnership and more like captivity. He dictated everything: where we went, who I could see, how money was spent. He justified it with, "I'm just looking out for you and the baby." But I knew better. Control dressed as care is still control. And yet, I stayed. Because where else could I go? My family had distanced themselves. My friends were gone. Daniel was gone. Richard was all I had left. Or so I thought. Arguments became routine. I'd bring up Daniel, and Richard would slam doors. I'd suggest decisions about the baby, and Richard would override me. I'd cry at night, and Richard would roll over, muttering, "Enough already." The man who had once seemed exciting, dangerous in a thrilling way, now just seemed dangerous. Period. And the more I saw his true colors, the more I realized, I hadn't just lost Daniel. I had trapped myself with a man who didn't love me, only owned me. One night, I dreamed of Daniel. We were sitting on the porch, the way we used to, sipping coffee. He looked at me with those soft eyes, the ones that always made me feel safe. "I loved you," he said gently. "But you killed us." When I reached for him, he faded. I woke up sobbing, clutching the empty pillow beside me. And I knew, dreams were all I'd ever have of him again. People always say time heals. But time doesn't heal betrayal. It just forces you to live with it. Every day, I woke up to the consequences of my choices. Every day, I carried a child that symbolized not love, but destruction. Every day, I lived with the echo of Daniel's last words to me in court: "I do want this divorce." The fallout wasn't one explosion. It was a slow, suffocating burial. And I was the one who had shoveled the dirt over myself. I thought the divorce was the end. But endings aren't always final. Sometimes, the real consequences don't reveal themselves until later, when the baby is born, when Richard's mask slips completely, when the isolation hardens into something unbearable. I thought I had already hit rock bottom. But I was wrong. The ground beneath me was still crumbling. Richard had always been confident. Charming. The kind of man who walked into a room and owned it. But after the divorce was finalized, something changed. It wasn't charm anymore. It was dominance. Control. He started small, correcting me in front of waiters, telling me what to order. Then it grew. He picked my clothes. He went through my phone. He decided which doctor I'd see, which friends I could call. When I protested, he'd laugh. "I'm just protecting you. You're too emotional right now." But I wasn't blind. I saw the truth: he wasn't protecting me. He was caging me. The house felt emptier than ever. Not just because Daniel was gone, but because the warmth was gone. Richard was physically present, but emotionally absent. He didn't care about my fears, my regrets, my guilt. He cared about control, about winning. I'd sit on the couch at night, staring at old wedding photos I hadn't yet packed away. Daniel's smile in those pictures felt like a ghost haunting me. Sometimes I'd press my phone to my chest, wishing I could hear his voice again. Even if it was just to say goodbye properly. But silence answered every time. At 7 months pregnant, I began experiencing sharp pains. One night, I doubled over in the kitchen, gasping. Richard rushed me to the hospital, but instead of concern, he seemed irritated. The doctor explained it was stress-related. Too much anxiety, too much pressure on my body. I needed rest. Peace. Stability. Richard scoffed. She worries too much. She just needs to calm down. I wanted to scream, I worry because of you. Because of this. Because I destroyed my life and now I'm trapped in yours. But I stayed quiet, tears streaming silently as the doctor patted my hand. After the hospital visit, Richard tightened his grip even more. No more going out alone, he declared. No more letters to Daniel. No more moping. He said it like he was doing me a favor. But it felt like prison. I'd stare out the window for hours, watching neighbors walk their dogs, couples holding hands, children riding bikes. Normal lives. And I thought, that could have been me. That should have been me. But I had thrown it away. Every night, I dreamed of Daniel. Not of the fights. Not of the courtroom. But of the small things. Him making pancakes on Sunday mornings, humming to himself. Him fixing the squeaky cabinet door in the kitchen. Him pulling me close when I complained of being cold. Dreams became my only refuge. But waking up was torture, because reality was Richard and Richard was not Daniel. I would have given anything just to hear Daniel call me love one more time. The contractions started on a rainy night. Richard drove me to the hospital, his face set, more annoyed than worried. Hours later, I held my baby in my arms, a tiny girl, red-faced, crying softly. Everyone says childbirth is magical. That holding your child for the first time fills you with overwhelming love. But I felt hollow. Because as I looked into her tiny eyes, all I could see was the chain of events that had brought her into this world. A betrayal. A broken marriage. A man I no longer wanted by my side. I loved her, yes. Fiercely. But she was also the reminder of everything I had lost. Richard beamed, holding her like a trophy. She's perfect. Our little family. Finally. Our family. The words made my stomach turn. Because no matter how he framed it, this wasn't a family. It was a prison sentence, wrapped in a pink blanket. When the nurse handed my daughter back to me, Richard leaned down and whispered, "See? Daniel's out of the picture for good. This is all that matters now." But I knew he was wrong. Because Daniel still mattered. He always would. Back home, nights were the worst. Richard would fall asleep quickly, exhausted. The baby would stir, and I'd rock her in the nursery, humming softly. But inside, I was crumbling. I'd whisper to her, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved better than this. You deserved Daniel." And every time I said his name, my heart broke all over again. It happened 2 weeks after bringing the baby home. I was in the kitchen, exhausted, still in my pajamas, trying to make a bottle. The baby cried in the other room, her wails piercing. Richard stormed in, furious. "Why is she always crying? Can't you do anything right?" Something inside me snapped. I slammed the bottle down, shouting, "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think this is the life I dreamed of? I had a husband who loved me. A good man. And I threw it all away for you." The words hung heavy in the air. Richard's face twisted, rage flashing in his eyes. For a terrifying second, I thought he might hit me. But instead, he sneered. "You think Daniel would take you back now? You're pathetic. He's happier without you." And that was my breaking point. Because I knew he was right. After Richard stormed out, I sank to the floor, sobbing. The baby's cries filled the air, but I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I had lost Daniel. I was trapped with Richard. And now, even motherhood, the one thing that could have given me purpose, felt tainted. For hours, I sat there, broken. And for the first time, I admitted the truth to myself. I had ruined everything. That night, I held my daughter and whispered, "I'll protect you. Even if it means protecting you from him. Even if it means facing the truth about me. Because the breaking point wasn't just about Richard. It was about me finally realizing that the life I wanted, the love I needed, was gone forever. And I had no one to blame but myself. The real question was, what would I do now? It has been a year since the divorce. A year since the courtroom where Daniel said the words that cut deeper than any blade, I do want this divorce. A year since I held my daughter for the first time, her tiny cries echoing in a life already splintered. People tell me a year is enough to heal. Enough to start over. But they're wrong. A year doesn't heal betrayal. A year only teaches you how to carry it. Richard still hovers, still controls. But even his hold is loosening. He doesn't love me. He never did. To him, I am the mother of his child, nothing more. He provides money, a roof, the occasional smile. But love? No. Love is what Daniel gave me. And love is what I threw away. Sometimes, when Richard isn't looking, I catch myself comparing them. The way Daniel's laughter used to fill a room versus the way Richard's voice grates like sandpaper. The way Daniel held me gently versus the way Richard grabs like he's claiming property. The contrast is unbearable. And I wonder, how did I ever mistake one for the other? I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Daniel is doing well. He sold our old house. Moved to a new city. Started over. Some say he's seeing someone. A woman kind and sweet, who doesn't carry the stench of betrayal on her skin. When I picture him smiling at her the way he once smiled at me, I feel my insides twist. Not from jealousy but from grief. Because that smile used to be mine. And I killed it. My daughter is the only pure thing left in my life. When she looks up at me with those wide eyes, unknowing, untainted, I feel both love and crushing guilt. She deserves better than me. Better than a mother who whispers apologies into her hair at night. Better than a childhood shaped by tension and resentment. Sometimes I think, maybe if Daniel had been her father, things would be different. Maybe she would have been born into love, not chaos. But she wasn't. And that truth will haunt me forever. I still write letters to Daniel. Not to send, I know better now. He wouldn't read them. He shouldn't. But writing them is the only way I survive. I tell him about the baby's first steps. About the nights I cry myself to sleep. About the way I still dream of him, almost every night. I imagine him reading them. I imagine his eyes softening, his heart forgiving. But it's only imagination. The silence answers back every time. If you're listening to me now, maybe you think I'm selfish. Maybe you think I got what I deserved. And you'd be right. But if there's anything you should take from my story, it's this: temptation is not love. It feels thrilling. It feels intoxicating. But it's a lie. A trap. Real love isn't flashy. It's steady. It's loyal. It's quiet mornings with coffee and Sunday pancakes. It's the way someone knows your favorite song, your hidden fears, your secret dreams. I had that. And I threw it away for a rush that burned out as quickly as it began. Don't make my mistake. Don't confuse lust for love. Because once you do, once you cross that line, there's no going back. Sometimes, I stand in front of the mirror and study the woman I've become. Tired eyes. Lines of regret etched into my face. Shoulders bent beneath the weight of choices I can't undo. I barely recognize her. This isn't the wife Daniel loved. This isn't the woman who once believed in forever. This is the ghost of a life destroyed by her own hands. And every time I see her, I want to scream, "What have you done?" The last time I saw Daniel was at the courthouse. That was a year ago. I doubt I'll ever see him again. If I did, I don't know what I'd say. Maybe nothing. Maybe just, "I'm sorry." But even that feels too small for the mountain of damage I caused. So instead, I say it here, into the void, into the silence that has become my closest companion. Daniel, I'm sorry. I loved you. I still love you. And I always will. Even if you never forgive me. Even if you've forgotten me. Because love doesn't vanish, even when you betray it. It just turns into chains you wear for the rest of your life. People like to tie stories up with bows. A neat ending. Redemption. Closure. But life isn't neat. And some mistakes don't get redemption. This isn't a story of forgiveness. It's a story of consequences. I live them every day. In the silence of an empty bed. In the hollow ache of Daniel's absence. In the eyes of a daughter who deserves a better mother. This is my ending. Not dramatic. Not redemptive. Just, final. If you take anything from me, let it be this. Guard the love you have. Protect it fiercely. Because once it's gone, once you've destroyed it, you will spend the rest of your life searching for pieces that can never be put back together. And you'll end up like me. A woman with nothing but regrets, holding a child born from betrayal, staring into silence and wishing for a second chance that will never come.